So today we are going to be working on deploying to EKS using a CI/CD pipeline. And we're going to do a very simple app today. It's going to be the 2048 app. This is going to be directly relevant to the assessment. As I showed some of you all on Saturday, the basic rundown is you will be deploying an app onto EKS using everything you've learned so far in the cohort. Not quite everything, because you don't have to use any Terraform. You don't have to, you can if you want, instead of using a command line to set up an EKS, for example, you can use Terraform. You could use everything you've learned, but unlike the last assessment, which I know was a lot, it had you combine everything. This one is mostly purely about Kubernetes. So that said, let's hop into today's assignment. I think using GitHub Actions, is this? Yeah, this is a hands-on lab. Looks like there's not an assignment listed here. So what I want is for everyone to follow along and do the lab with me, because even once we get to the end, there's probably going to be some troubleshooting left to do. So that will be your assignment for today, to get this completely working. I actually am running into some issues too. I think my issue is I'm suspecting it's related to the Dockerfile, but we'll learn more when we get there. For now, let's run through the basic lab. So we are going to set up a CI/CD pipeline. That means configuring GitHub Actions. So writing a workflow, adding our secrets. At this point, if you haven't already created some kind of repeatable process to make it easier, we'll look at doing that too. And once our repository is set up, we will then deploy the Kubernetes application. I don't think we're actually going to be doing this part. I don't know why that's in there. But it could be a stretch goal if we have time, which I don't think we will, but it could be a stretch goal. Prereqs, make sure you have a WSCLI installed, which I know you do. Same with EKS. I think everyone who was at least here on Saturday was running it all right. So all of these should be met. And let's start with setting up our cluster. If you don't already have a cluster running, or if you're not using one of the clusters that is already up, you'll want to set up the cluster. So it takes a while, as we've all noticed. So what you can do is, in one terminal, you can run the command that was in the README from a few weeks ago. In this case, I ran it with a name, March 31st cluster. So let's see if I haven't cleared my screen out yet. Okay, cool. So this is me starting the cluster. It spins up. It takes a while to start. So while all of that is starting, let's go ahead and set up our repo. And I'll see if I can do this from scratch as well, so you have something to follow along with. And maybe just to keep things clean, I'll do this in a new set of terminals. So March 31. Let's make a new directory. Let's call it lab directory, making a repository. Let's say this is going to be my repo, right? Fastest way to set up a repository from your command line is to just go ahead and make some files. So the things that we're going to need is a Kubernetes directory and a deployment .yaml. You could just leave it blank for now, save, leave blank, and maybe even add the service .yaml, because we'll need a service to run the Nginx server so that the 2048 app can be served to the EC2. So let's make this, let's save. Now I have a basic repository. So I do a git init. Oh, I should actually, I'm gonna rename this. I'm gonna rename this directory real quick. 131 lab. And the reason I'm renaming this is because I want to have a more specific name for my Git repository. So git init, I have now initialized this directory into a local GitHub directory. Well, a local Git repository. And I can add this new directory to this repo. Then I can commit it. Actually, before I commit, let's back up a bit. We've made the repo locally. We want to have a remote location for us to push the files, right? So we have to set up a repository on GitHub as well. So gh repo create is our command for doing that. And we will push an existing local repository to GitHub. We'll use the dot symbol to specify the present directory as the path to the repository we want to push. And it's gonna ask for a name. And I guess I didn't have to absolutely rename my folder, but if I wanted to give the repository a unique name here, I personally like for my folder name to match the repository name. So it's all preference. So leave it blank if you want to just use the folder name. Next, you select your organization owner, give it a description if you want, and you set a visibility. Yes, when it asks you to add a remote, and you could just leave the name as default, which is origin. So now that we've used gh-repo create to make a remote repository and essentially map it to our local repository, if we were to do a git remote --v, it will confirm that we have a remote repository. Right now, it's empty. So let's go ahead. Let's finish the commit after having done the add. And let's push. Whoops. Okay, and if we refresh here, we see that it is now up to date. Okay, so let's see. If you are creating a cluster at this point, it probably might actually still be setting up. So we might still have time. Did I clear my screen? I could have sworn we were looking at the cluster logs earlier, and now they're gone. In any case, let's pretend that it's spinning up in a different terminal, and because we're still waiting, we can go ahead and work on something else. So we have started by creating our repository. Next, we want to grab the 2048 repo, right? So let's see. There is this 2048 repo inside of the DevOps organization. I'll grab this, drop it inside of the Zoom chat. I am recording, right? Okay, I am, yeah. And right, there's a few ways you could do this now. We are definitely going to clone this. You can clone it into your project, but Git is going to complain because you've already made your project a Git repository. So if you were to put a GitHub repo into another repo, it would have to be done so as a submodule. So that's one option. The other option is to just go up one directory, git clone into uh, its own folder. It's probably not even necessary. So I'll pass in the dot symbol to make sure that it clones into the directory I moved into. And now we have all the 2048 files, right? So this is one way of, or this is a second way of doing it, right? You just grab every file and you move it to its own directory inside of your actual project repo. So my project is called March 31 Lab. I have to make a new directory called, I don't know, I'll call it Web App. And I'm going to move everything in here. So just type out a few characters, hit tab to autocomplete and speed things up. And once I've got everything, I'm going to move it over to that new directory. So March 31 Lab, 48, no, Web App. Okay. The reason we're doing this is because we are then going to write inside of our GitHub Actions workflow a job for building an Nginx image from these files. And we will reference that inside of our manifest. So we'll push the image and the pod will know to use this image. And let's go ahead and go into our project directory. We set up our project files. So we could either write the Dockerfile now. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that while we're doing this. So inside here, let's create a Dockerfile from Nginx. What version do I want? I was using 1.16 earlier. We are going to copy everything in our web app directory, or whatever you name your folder, into this default path that Nginx uses. And this is where I think I might want something a little more complex, but I don't know that for sure yet. I haven't actually started troubleshooting this part. So I'm going to leave it at that, and we could worry about it later on. Now, if we had that other terminal going, we could check to see if the cluster has spun up yet. Let's pretend it hasn't, and that we have some time to do something else, and that's add your secrets, right? So once you've created a repo and you've given it a remote origin, you could then start to use GH secrets and GH variable commands to set those environment variables. And we could do that all from the terminal, but we could also do it through a script, right? So let's make a new shell script called secrets.sh. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a GH variable set. We'll point to a file. If you don't already have like your variables inside a file that you can access regularly, then you could just create a file in your present working directory, right? So we're going to access a file from the present working directory. And That should be good. We'll get to this kubeconfig later on. Okay, so what's next? We now want to go ahead and make that .env file, and we're going to need stuff like your your AWS region, your AWS. Okay, yeah, this isn't filled out. Yeah, so you'll want things like your AWS region. In my case, I'm going to use US East 1, your AWS access key, AWS secret access key, and don't worry about kubeconfig for now. We'll add that later. And where I have registry username, that's because I like to use GitHub container registry. And so you've got your options, right? You could use either GitHub container registry or Docker Hub. Either way, you're going to want either your Docker Hub authentication or your registry authentication, right? So something like Docker Hub username, Docker Hub password, or you could call it GHCR username, GHCR, not RC, and GHCR password, which is, I think, technically a token, but those are options. You have some flexibility here. If you are going to use GitHub Container Registry, you could either hard code the path, or at this point, you could actually just manually set it. Not really a big deal either way. But this will get repended to the start of the image name. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go ahead and add those variables in another window because some of it is sensitive. So let me go ahead and do that. And let me know if you all are caught up to this point or if you need a bit more time. Thumbs up, thumbs down will suffice.
I'm good. My cluster won't spin up, but we can go over that later.
It won't, like, at all. It's giving you errors.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll troubleshoot that later. Okay. So, right, let me finish adding my secrets. Actually, what am I doing? We don't need the AWS key right now, I don't think, do we? I'll add my secrets later. What we know for sure we need is going to be inside of the right the pipeline. So we'll definitely want a username password for the registry. We're definitely going to want. Oh, we do. We do need our AWS credentials. Yes, of course, for the EKS part. So I'll add that in a sec. And right, the kube config. At this point, if your cluster has finished setting up, it should spit out some messages, right? And one of those messages will tell you what your configuration file is named and where to find it, right? So for me, that was created inside of the kubeconfigs directory, inside of my user directory, and it was named march31-cluster.yaml, which is just the name that I passed in when I created the cluster. So you're also going to add to your secrets.sh file secret set kubeconfig. we'll use the redirect symbol to grab the value from this config and store it as a secret in your GitHub project repository. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. Oh, and if you do it like this, then you don't have to add the kubeconfig to the .env file, right? So I could just add that to my new secrets.sh. And I'm just going to use my old files. Just pretend I added them to this new env. Okay. So once that is finished, we do our chmod plus x to make this shell script executable, and then we execute it. Ta-da! Okay, now we've got our secrets stored in our repo. Now at this point, the cluster has finished, and yes, we've confirmed that it finished because we had the kubeconfig value passed to us. So where are we at now? Now we could work on our deployment files, and I think the indentation is not very good here, or at least it doesn't copy well if you copy it from this README. So we'll probably have to do a bit of tweaking on that. So let's go ahead. Let's go to our Kubernetes directory. Let's open up those files that we created earlier, and we can just drop in this boilerplate manifest. All right, and let's start to run through this right now. So first thing I think this needs to be indented. I need to just decide if I want to use single or double indents, and I'm going to stick with single, which is 2 spaces. Replicas needs to be indented under spec. Selector, I'll just move back a bit. Templates should be lined up with selector. All that back. I think labels needs to be under metadata. Containers also needs to be indented. Whoops. This gets indented. And then I just clean up the remainder. Okay, this should be good. And if it's not, then I'll fail. And what we want to change here is instead of using this default Nginx container, we're going to use the container that we push, right? But we can either change it now or later. Let's leave it for now, and we'll change it once we create the workflow. Okay. So let's also open up our service.yaml. Let's get this other boilerplate, which I think also needs some indentation fixing. Indent name, indent everything under spec. Line up the ports. Okay, that should be good. Now we could work on our workflow. So that means making our GitHub, our hidden GitHub directory, workflows subdirectory, and a name for our workflow. I'm going to call mine CICD. You could call yours whatever you like. Okay. So for the start of this workflow, I think we have some boilerplate that we can use as well here. So a name and some conditions and some variables, right? So let's just go ahead and copy all of it and we'll fix as we go. Okay. I'm going to change my Docker values because I changed them to use this. So just make sure yours matches whatever you're actually using. If you don't have an AWS region variable, you can just hard code it here. I do have a variable, but I'll leave this hard coded for now. Namespace it should be default unless you've manually changed it. And we name the cluster. We pass in for the cluster name, whatever you named your cluster. Right, everything looks good so far. We are going to build for our first job. And what we're going to do is we're going to check out the repo so that the Actions workspace can access these files. We'll set up Docker build X and we'll use a login. Now, if you are using the GitHub container registry, you have to add a registry variable, I think is what it is. And .registry is what I have. We will then build and push, changing anything that we need to as we go. Also, if you are using a GitHub container registry, you'll have to prepend that tag with that path. Okay, so got that, my username. You could do something cool here where instead of just passing in or hard coding the name, you could do github.events.repository to get the name of the repo, I believe. And let me just double check that. No, this is the new one. Of.event.repository.name, and it's event singular. Okay. And then we want that to be latest version. And that should be good for our push, our build and push step. Next, our EKS deploy. Oh, actually, now that we know we will be building and pushing, and we know what we've named our image, we go back to our deployment.yaml and make sure that this lines up, right? So this is not the right one. Don't want to get confused here. Shoot, I'm just going to open it like this. Okay, so instead of this nginx config, I'm going to want like what's that? Well, I already know what mine's gonna like GHCR container registry.io. March 31 lab at latest. That should be the name of my image. And we make sure everything else is the same. I'm going to comment this out because I don't need this anymore. This is an alternative option that you could try instead of pushing the image. You could just use a volume mount and mount that index.html and static files into where Nginx will be serving it from. But I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to save. And we're going to go back to our workflow. Now we could work on the deploy job. And if you want, you could set a dependency where it needs the first job to complete. We can then, well, we'll have to reuse the actions checkout step. We will want to configure our credentials. So that's where we pass in our access key ID, our secret key, our region. And then we'll want to use this Kubernetes set context action to grab your kube config from your secrets, and it will run its action magic to make sure that within the GitHub Actions environment, the Kubernetes context is configured correctly. From there, we could finally apply our manifest files. And because we threw our manifest files into a subdirectory, we could just pass in that subdirectory and it will apply everything inside the subdirectory. Okay, I think that is it. Let me run through my notes from earlier. I think that should be good. Now I can go ahead and, whoops, add everything, make a commit. Um, and I can push. Now we'll be able to see whatever errors will get in our way. Okay. So okay, what did I mess up already? Yep, I have a typo. And I'm going to fix that typo. Going to push. Okay, now should have the workflow spinning up. Okay. So far, so good. Checkout completed, setup completed, Docker X build. Oh no, completed, and then it complains here because valid reference format. Here's my registry username, the repo name, latest. Let's see what these values are. I might have registry username password. I have the wrong value for one of these. Free registry username, GitHub event, .repository, .name. I don't see any typos. So let me double check my actual variables. Okay, so I have my registry inside of variables. Oh, I guess I have it inside of secrets as well. Let's just make sure it's grabbing these correctly. I don't know. I can't see what's inside secrets.registry. I know the one inside of variables is correct. So I'm going to just set this to vars so that it grabs from the variables. And let's see, is there anything else I want to change? AWS region. It's hard coded, which is fine. I really wanted to. Now that I know the value is correct, just say it, set it to AWS region from vars. And now I want to make a commit. What was I doing? Workflow. Okay. That's right. Why is this the Yeah, that's weird. I don't see what's wrong. This looks exactly like what I have in my. Maybe it's not exactly what I have. Let's see. I'm going to compare it to what I had in my last file. Ah, there it is. I am missing a dollar symbol. Okay, we finally found it. Let's push again. Oh, we might want to add first. Both like it. Oh, wait, why is it not showing? I just added this. I just saved it in the right directory. It's still showing a missing. Registry again. Insanity. I'm gonna see if. Oh no, is that what I'm doing? Am I editing the wrong file? I am editing the wrong file. I don't know why. I thought I moved it. Thought I moved it. I didn't realize it copied. Or let me actually try delete that. Let me go in workflows. The right folder. Yep, there's a work in there. Let's go ahead and get rid of this bad directory. And let's edit the right file this time. Okay, so I want to read from vars. It's a big deal, but now I could fix my path once and for all. My tag, that is git add. What is this? Fourth time's a charm. So okay, looks like it's building. And it has pushed successfully. Okay. Now, what are we doing? Okay, now we're running into, oh, right. Okay. If you're at the step that I'm at, then you're probably getting the same message here as well. There are a few different ways of resolving this. The path that I decided to go is to install AWS IAM Authenticator. So let's go ahead and update our workflow to do that. So at our EKS deploy, we failed at deploy to EKS, right? So everything up above it is good. And what we have to do now is add a new step. AWS, yeah, authenticator. And we are going to paste this in here, which I do need to add to the README. But I will first send this inside of Zoom chat. So let me add this to our Zoom chat. Zoom might mess up the indentation, so just fix it once you do. What, this looks wrong. Actually, no. There we go. And what else? Let's do a validate equals false because we want to ignore these errors. Okay, so now I'm going to save and we are going to try again. Okay, I also just noticed it was doing the build and push again. If for the sake of troubleshooting, I already know that my build is good, one thing I can do is I could go to the build and push job and do an if false so that it will skip this job here on out. I would also have to remember to comment this out. This is effectively the same thing as just commenting out the whole job. But if you do it this way, which I don't know, it's subjective, it's a preference. You might think it's cleaner, you might not. At the very least, it will still show inside of the GitHub Actions workflow as a job that exists, but was just skipped. Okay, so we got another failure. Couldn't get server API group list during the unable to recognize these files. Oh, I did not see this earlier. So now we're running into an error. Is anybody else getting this?
I could not get that far, so I don't know.
Okay. One thing. I'm unable to recognize case deployment.yaml. Let's see here. This is old. I think we're on version 4. I'm going to just try incrementing by one version. What else? All this should be correct. I don't know if that'll do it. Um, let's maybe add this step as well. I'm going to add another step where we update the Qt config. So we use this Well, actually, let's do this one step at a time. I want to see actually for sure which which step fixes this. So git add commit dates queue control set context version action version. And if that doesn't work, then we'll try something else. Oh, and we saw that we were able to just skip the build and push because it was unnecessary. Oh no, it failed. And it's failing for the same reason. Couldn't get server API group list. So something is up with the config. Okay, so that didn't quite solve it. Let's try adding another step. What we're going to do is we're going to run AWS EKS update cube config. We'll make sure to pass in a region. And we'll make sure to set the cluster name, just in case for whatever reason these were not getting set correctly. Both of these should have been set when we first created the cluster. But let's see if this helps. Okay, so it failed again. The parameter name contains invalid characters. Is strange. Hmm, really nervous. All this looks good to me. There it is. Does anyone see it? I don't know why I added .yaml here. It's been a long day. Okay. What am I doing? I am committing. I'm going to call this remove fixed cluster name. Oh man. Yeah. Add my missing dash M. And I am going to push. Okay. Let's see if workflow run number 8 makes it to the end. All right, we have another error. And it's during the deploy part. Okay. So it's got to have something to do with my indentations. Okay, the deployment isn't valid. Empty selector. So let's look at our deployment. Selector, match labels. I think this needs to be indented. Oops. This indented too far. It's probably indented too far. Go ahead and just delete these. And I think that's good now. Right, you need to go up to directories. And hopefully our indents are now correct. While we're waiting on that run, let's just double check. That's not what I want. It's going to be, I'm going to compare it to, there's nothing in here. Okay, well, no need to compare it. It succeeded. Okay, so it's deployed. If we go over to AWS, go over to our EC2. And you'll only see the one from earlier. see. How's everyone else doing? I think I'm having a key issue.
I don't want to.
I, my cluster is up. The cluster pod is up. I'm trying to, let me try this. Let's see. Showing old cluster. Let's switch over to yeah, I am on the wrong context for some reason. Why do I not see what happened to my today's cluster? Okay. Try looking at our big. I'm missing a step. Let me see here. Okay. Okay, I am now using, okay. I have my next service. Actually, I think all of these are named the same as what I had before, which isn't good. Make these like dates. And I'm going to put one more time. Cool. So the new deployment is up. Also a new pod associated with my new deployment. So let's take a look at that. Services, we should have service. We look at the logs for our pod. Let's see what's happening. 401 to the image pull. think at this point, I think what you need to troubleshoot is getting the right credentials to the pod. So that's what I'm missing. Need to make secrets and probably maybe even a config. So let's go ahead and it's may or may not work. I think it's going to take me a sec to try a few more things, but let's go ahead and break for now. I'll open up breakout rooms. We've been here for about an hour and a half, so go ahead and take a break if you need, and I'll be here in the main room to help anyone troubleshoot. Sound good? Cool.
Sounds good. Oh, I looked at the errors getting earlier.
Mhm.
It's like there's VPC limit, internet gateway limit. So I think it's just on US East 1 we're reached a limit
Okay.
for. So I think that was what it was.
And you tried switching to a different region?
No, not yet. I was too busy. I was watching you trying to figure it out. So
Okay.
I will try that though when I get back.
Cool.